My life with Anya was simple, but it was ours. After the divorce from Riyah, things were civil. We were never the kind of exes who screamed at each other. Ours was a quieter kind of separation, a slow drifting apart, like two boats untied from the same dock, carried by different currents. Riyah's current was one of immense success. She came from old money, but she multiplied it with a fierce, brilliant mind for business. She built a global empire from a single idea, becoming a titan of industry, a name in glossy magazines. My world was smaller, quieter. I was a history teacher. Our home was a small, rented apartment that always smelled of old books and the jasmine plant Anya kept on her windowsill. I found my wealth not in bank statements, but in the light in my daughter's eyes, in the sound of her laughter, in the quiet satisfaction of a lesson well taught. Riyah provided for Anya, of course, the best schools, a generous allowance. But I provided the home, the stability, the love that wasn't tied to performance or expectation. I never felt jealous of Riyah's wealth. Truly, I didn't. My pride was in my daughter, in the wonderful, kind-hearted woman she was becoming. She was my greatest legacy. And I suppose, in a quiet corner of my heart, I always believed that Riyah's legacy, her vast fortune, would one day be Anya's. It was a given, a natural conclusion. Anya was her only child. It made sense. I thought it was Riyah's way of ensuring our daughter would never have to worry, would never know the kind of struggle I saw in the eyes of some of my students' families. Anya was the bridge between our two worlds. She would have dinner with her mother in a penthouse overlooking the city, and the next day, she'd be in our small kitchen, helping me chop vegetables, telling me stories that made us both laugh. She never made me feel that my world was less. She cherished it. That was the greatest gift she could have ever given me. The fault line, the one I never saw, was my own sense of security. I was so sure of my place in Anya's life, so confident in the moral high ground of my simple, honest world, that I never considered the silent judgments being passed from Riyah's world onto mine. I thought her money was just money. I didn't understand that for her, it was a tool, a language, the ultimate measure of a person's worth. Riyah's passing was sudden. A swift and silent illness that took her from us in a matter of months. The funeral was a grand, somber affair. Powerful people in black, their whispers filled with numbers and deals even in their grief. Anya was devastated. She leaned on me, and I was her rock. In the weeks that followed, we navigated our grief together. We sorted through photo albums, not stock portfolios. We remembered a mother, not a mogul. The call from the lawyer's office came, asking both of us to be present for the reading of the will. Anya was nervous. "What if she left me nothing, Papa?" she had whispered the night before. I had laughed, a soft, reassuring sound. "Don't be silly, Beta. You are her everything, her whole world." I truly believed that. I believed Riyah, for all her corporate ruthlessness, had a soft, unshakable core of love for her daughter. We walked into that opulent office together. I held her hand, ready to be the steady presence she needed as she stepped into a future of immense responsibility and wealth. The lawyer, Mr. Desai, was courteous but distant. He offered us water. He expressed his condolences. Then he opened the envelope. He began to read the legal jargon, confirming Anya as the sole beneficiary of the entire estate. I felt a surge of relief for her. I squeezed her hand. "See? I wanted to say, I told you." But then Mr. Desai paused. He looked up from the document, his gaze shifting from Anya to me. The room grew colder. "There is, however, a single binding condition," he said. Anya's hand tightened in mine. Mr. Desai's eyes were fixed on me. "The entire estate, every asset, share, and property, will be transferred to Ms. Anya Malhotra only upon her marriage." I nodded slowly. That seemed old-fashioned, perhaps, but not unreasonable. A way to ensure she was settled. But he wasn't finished. He took a slow breath, as if the next words were heavy stones he had to carry. "And the marriage," he continued, his voice dropping, "must be to a person of a specific background. It must be to someone from a family of comparable industrial standing, vetted and approved by the estate's trustees. He let that hang in the air for a moment, a monstrous, absurd clause. Then he delivered the final, stunning blow. Specifically, he said, his gaze unwavering, the will states that under no circumstances can the inheritance pass to her if she is, or ever has been, married to someone from what it terms a mediocre professional background, such as a teacher. The silence that followed was not just an absence of sound. It was a physical presence, thick and suffocating. The drive home was silent. Anya stared out the window, tears streaming down her face. I kept my eyes on the road, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. A teacher. A mediocre professional background. The words echoed in my head, each time with a fresh sting of humiliation. It wasn't just about me. It was an attack on my entire life's work, on the value of every lesson I'd ever taught, on the quiet dignity I had built my life upon. The first few days were the hardest. Anya was furious on my behalf. "It's disgusting, Papa. I don't want her money. I'll refuse it," she would declare, her voice shaking with anger. I would calm her, tell her not to make decisions in anger. But inside, I was crumbling. The small apartment, once my sanctuary, now felt like a symbol of everything Riyah had looked down upon. My books felt like relics of a failed life. My modest car, a joke. The pressure began to build in quiet, insidious ways. Anya had a boyfriend, Rohan, a sweet, earnest boy who was studying to be an architect. They had dreams of starting their own firm. He came from a lovely, middle-class family. After the will, Anya's relationship with Rohan became strained. She started looking at him differently, and I could see the fear in her eyes. Was she choosing between love and a future? The trustees, three stern-faced men in suits who had been Riyah's most trusted advisors, began to appear in our lives. They would call Anya for informational meetings. They would ask about her friends, her social circle. I felt myself being pushed to the sidelines. My opinion, once so valued by my daughter, now seemed to carry the weight of my mediocrity. One evening, I overheard her on the phone with a friend. "I love him, I do," she was crying. "But what about my future? My mother's legacy? It's not just money. It's her life's work. Can I just throw that away?" That was the moment my heart truly broke. It wasn't about the money for me, and I realized with a sickening jolt that it was starting to be about the money for her. Riyah's plan was working perfectly. She was using her fortune to control our daughter from beyond the grave, to sculpt her life into a mirror image of her own. And in the process, she was erasing me. I was the inconvenient, mediocre parent, the one whose influence needed to be surgically removed. I started eating alone. The meals I cooked tasted like ash. I would sit in my armchair, the receipt for the month's rent sitting on the side table, a stark reminder of my financial reality. I looked at my bank account, at the modest sum I had saved for Anya's wedding, a sum that was a fraction of Riyah's monthly interest. I felt small. I felt worthless. The betrayal wasn't just in the words of the will. It was in the slow, agonizing unraveling of the beautiful bond one shared with my daughter. A month after the will reading, Mr. Desai, the lawyer, called me. He asked to meet privately. I was wary. What more could there be? Hadn't they done enough? We met in a small, quiet cafe, far from his imposing office. He looked tired. "Arjun," he said, using my first name for the first time. "I need to speak to you. What I am about to tell you is a breach of my professional ethics. But it is a necessary one, for my own conscience." I said nothing, just waited. "Riyah's will, the condition, it wasn't her idea," he said, his voice low. "She was very ill at the end. The trustees, they drafted that clause. They convinced her that it was for Anya's own good. They told her that you were a limiting influence, that your lack of ambition would hold Anya back, would make her soft, would prevent her from being the ruthless leader the business empire needed." He slid a small, sealed envelope across the table. Riyah was heavily medicated. She signed the final version without fully grasping the cruelty of that specific wording. But a few days before she died, she gave this to me. She told me to give it to you if I felt you needed to hear from her. I think now is that time. My hands trembled as I took the envelope. I went home to the silence of my apartment, and I opened it. Inside was a single, handwritten note on Ria's personal stationery. The handwriting was shaky, a ghost of her usual firm script. Asterisk, I fear I have made a terrible mistake. I listened to the wrong voices. I was afraid for Anya, afraid of the world. I thought only money could armor her. I see now, too late, that the armor you gave her was stronger. Kind heart. Amoral Campes. I am sorry I never said this to your face. You are a better parent than I ever was. Take care of our girl. Asterisk. I read it once, then again and again. The anger didn't vanish, but it transformed. It was no longer a hot, raging fire, but a cold, determined flame. Ria hadn't been my tormentor. She had been a frightened, dying woman, manipulated by the very men who were now trying to control my daughter's life. The power balance had shifted. I held the truth. I didn't shout. I didn't immediately call Anya. I sat with the letter for a long time, letting the new reality settle around me. My response had to be dignified. It had to be lawful. And it had to be decisive. My plan was not about getting the money. It was about freeing my daughter. I made an appointment with a lawyer of my own, a sharp, young legal expert named Priya who specialized in contesting wills and fiduciary misconduct. I showed her Ria's letter. We have a case, she said, her eyes gleaming. We can challenge the will on grounds of undue influence and lack of testamentary capacity at the time of that specific clause's inclusion. But a public, messy legal battle was the last thing I wanted. It would tear Anya apart. Is there another way? I asked. A quieter way? Priya thought for a moment. The trustees have a fiduciary duty to act in the best interest of the beneficiary, Anya, forcing her into a marriage of their choosing for financial gain. That is a massive breach of that duty. We don't necessarily have to fight the will. We can fight the trustees. That became the plan. We began to gather evidence. Priya helped me file formal complaints with the Bar Association and the corporate regulatory bodies, detailing the trustees' actions. We documented every suggestion they made to Anya about suitable boys, every veiled threat about the inheritance. I reached out to a few of Ria's older, more ethical business associates, men and women who had known her for years and were disgusted by the trustees' heavy-handedness. They agreed to provide silent support to put pressure on the board. It was a slow, meticulous process. I continued teaching my classes. I continued to be a father to Anya, offering her support without revealing my hand. I wanted her to make her own choice, free from pressure, free from the shadow of the will. I was planting seeds, not setting bombs. The climax came at a so-called family meeting the trustees had called. They had arranged for Anya to meet the son of a business associate. It was a casual lunch, they said. Nothing formal. I was not invited, but I showed up anyway. I walked into the private dining room of an expensive hotel. Anya looked surprised and uncomfortable. The 3 trustees were there, along with a young man and his parents. They all looked up as I entered. Mr. Malhotra, the lead trustee, Mr. Khanna, said, his voice cold. This is a private meeting. I am her father, I said calmly. That makes it my business. Anya stood up. Papa, what's going on? I looked at her, then at the trustees. I didn't raise my voice. I'm here to put an end to this charade. I turned to Mr. Khanna. You manipulated a dying woman. You inserted a cruel and unethical clause into her will to control her daughter and, by extension, her company. You have breached your fiduciary duty. He scoffed. Those are serious and baseless accusations. Are they? I asked quietly. I didn't need to show Ria's letter. Priya, my lawyer, had done her work. The complaints are already filed with the regulatory bodies. Your colleagues on the board have been informed. Your reputation, gentlemen, is about to become as valuable as you deemed my profession to be. The room was silent. The other family looked deeply embarrassed. The young man muttered an apology and ushered his parents out. Mr. Khanna's face was pale. You have no proof. I have the truth, I said. And I have a letter from Ria, written in her own hand, stating that she was manipulated and that she regretted the condition. Do you really want to fight this in court? Do you really want the world to know how you preyed on a dying woman's fears? The fight went out of his eyes. He knew it was over. I looked at Anya. Her eyes were wide, filled with a dawning horror and understanding. Is this true? She whispered to the trustees. They had no answer. Their silence was all the confirmation she needed. The trustees resigned quietly. A new, independent board was appointed to oversee the trust until Anya turned 25. The malicious clause in the will was legally set aside, deemed unenforceable. The inheritance was Anya's, free and clear. But the real victory was not in the court documents. It was in my living room a week later. Anya came over and we talked for hours. She cried for the mother she lost, for the manipulation she had almost fallen for. She apologized for ever doubting the life we had built together. I don't care about the money, Papa, she said, and this time I knew she meant it. I care about you. I care about Rohan. I care about being happy. I smiled. The money is a tool, Beta. Just a tool. It doesn't have to define you. Your mother, in her final moments, understood that. She wanted you to have your own voice. Don't let her down by letting the money become your master. Anya and Rohan are now engaged. They are planning their wedding. A simple affair, funded in part by her inheritance, but shaped entirely by their own hearts. I still live in my small apartment. I still teach. But now, when I walk into my classroom, I don't feel mediocre. I feel proud. The greatest inheritance we can leave our children isn't wealth. It is the courage to live a life of their own choosing, guided by love, not fear. If this real-life story resonated with you, please share your own thoughts in the comments below. And subscribe for more calm, reflective stories about family, love, and finding your strength.